Oh, there you are. Never mind. I see you. There's Mike.
That's Mike.
Yeah.
Good evening. It's 6:01. It's Monday, July 11th, 2022. Again, this is the 90% Design Plans Workshop, Public Information Workshop for the Ward Trail Phase 1 and the pedestrian bridge. We've had several workshops in the past discussing not only the trail itself, but also the vegetation, tree impacts. So we're pretty much almost at the finish line. After this meeting, it'll be presented to Town Council for a final approval. We did receive about $760,000 from the Safe Routes to School program that was championed by Congresswoman Val Demings. So this is a project that is time sensitive, so we need to move forward with it. And it goes from North Drive all the way up to Windermere Elementary School. And with that said, I can kick it off to Mike Woodward, who can do a quick overview of what's being presented tonight. But I only see that we have one member from the public, which is Vicky. Is that Vicky Hurst? Vicky, you can unmute.
There we go. I'm unmuted. Thank you.
All right. So
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it is Vicky Hurst. I can tell.
Yep. Yep.
Voice. So yeah, it's mostly staff. So this presentation is for you, but it will be posted on our YouTube channel and our social media site. But if Mike just wants to give a quick overview, we do have two council members online right now, which is Councilmember Davitt and Councilmember Martini. And Chris Davidson, I believe, is with KHA.
That's right. Chris is our primary roadway designer for this project.
All right, thank you. That's Mike Woodward with Kinley Moore Associates. They've been working this for quite some time, and we are still awaiting, hopefully, funding from the Healthy West Orange, I guess, alliance you would call it, which is dedicated about $5 million to interconnecting all of the trail systems within West Orange County. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Mike to present the 90% plans.
Great, thank you, Robert. And so hopefully everybody can see my screen, but what I want to start with is near the end of our plan set. Robert mentioned we're at 90%. Once you get to the back, that's where our landscape plans start. And 64 is the landscape plans. Page 64 out of 75 is the landscape plan. So I am going to spend some time explaining these and kind of going over some of the different areas that our folks came up with, our landscape architects came up with to really make this area special. A lot of the alignment is similar to what we've presented in the past, but we have made some additional changes, primarily for tree mitigation. We had several meetings in the past. We walked the site early on. A separate arborist was hired by the town and walked up and down with town staff to figure out which trees were invasive, which ones should be removed, and really account for all those things. So we took that arborist report, and since then we even modified the alignment, right? So that was back in December 2021. Since then, we've modified the alignment to move even more, to provide more protection, right? So some of the recommendations were to do some root protection or root pruning. And so where we thought, well, maybe that's not even that's not enough, can we move the trail a little bit farther over to avoid more of that critical root zone? And so we did. And by doing that, we were able to save even more of the trees. And so what you see here, starting on page 70 out of 75, is the initial critical root zone, which is the first circle going around the tree. And then that second circle that's even larger is more of the total size of the canopy. And if you go through a portion of the area in that outside circle, the tree's gonna be okay as long as you're not taking about 50% of it. So if you look at the trees, for example, on station 101, station 101 plus about 20, we're able to keep those trees by shifting the alignment and staying a little bit farther away. You'll also see this note about rebar chairs, where we do have a detail showing what that looks like. But basically what'll happen before too much construction is we'll go in and set these rebar chairs that allow the rebar to be a little bit higher than normal, and then we'll have some notes, specific notes for the contractor to place washed stone carefully to avoid damaging the exposed roots and not compact the soil in those areas. By doing that, we can provide an extra level of protection for several of these trees. So any place you'll see in this tree mitigation plan, this kind of hatching that's dark, that's to provide the rebar chairs. Another element to point out here, I'll zoom in and wait for that to catch up a little bit, but this little fence with the X's here, that's a fence to protect the root zone of the tree. So that would go up before construction starts, and that would be in place the whole time just to protect the tree roots. In addition to that, we're calling out where to put in rebar chairs. And this tree mitigation plan also shows which trees are to be removed. We've accounted for those. We've looked at the species type and everything. And again, a pretty huge amount of effort has gone into trying to protect the trees and preserve whatever trees we can. That's certainly going to be the case for the southern portion of the trail. And as we continue to move forward, move along to the right is to the north. So if you could just get oriented that way, that might help some of us. So as we get closer to the canal, which you see right here, we do go right through a couple of trees, and there's really no way of having this align with the area on the top of the berm on the other side of the canal without impacting those trees. So it's unfortunate. Some of them are pretty cool trees, but we're very limited and constrained. At least one of these is a pretty large, substantial oak. But once we do get to the north area of the canal, or north of the canal, there's a water body to the left, just an open water drainage system that goes to the canal. And so we want to do everything we can to not impact that canal, or not impact that open water, which means we're going to try to stay on top of the flattest part of the berm that's in that heavily wooded area. So you'll see this is the area that does have the vast majority of the tree removal. It's just very thick, very dense in that area. And so our plan is to stay on top of the berm in that location, so as to avoid having to build up using fill that might impact other areas, either closer to Main Street or closer to that water body. So again, we're kind of just staying in the middle and doing what we can in this area.
Mike, can
But
I
again-
interrupt you? Can I interrupt you for one
Sure.
second?
Yep.
Where is the canal on that? Previous
Sorry.
drawing? Sorry.
I did not do a good job of orienting everybody. So this is the canal right here. These dashed lines, that's the open water area. And so here's like these, we do have some bridge plans that show this in some different detail, but the canal's
Okay.
kind of right in here, right
Gotcha.
around
Thank you.
station 109. And you'll notice immediately south of that, we've got this shared pond site that will also provide some water quality and storage and conveyance for the old dirt main paving project. So there's definitely some internal staff level discussions of, okay, well, what's going to go first? Who needs to build this? And then how do we show this pond in a way that where we can build it to benefit both improvements? Because since it's a shared pond, there's just that extra coordination.
Got it.
And
Thank
I
you.
apologize for not saying where I was starting or pointing out the canal, but it's right here. And so all these trees here are in that area that's just north of it. Now, as you get around station 115 or so, actually a little farther up, station 116. Now that's where where the kind of heavily wooded area starts to clear out. And we initially had this connection that you see over here. This is the golf cart connection to South Lake Butler. You remember we had talked about allowing golf carts primarily on the portion where the bridge is located, but to avoid crossing that open water, we're going to allow golf carts north up to where the kind of thick wooded area clears out. And we did move this path in order to avoid some of the trees that were in this location. There's some, and that was one of the recommendations from the arborist. I don't know if the report pulls up or if I just shared the document itself, but one of the notes from the arborist was talking about a longleaf pine near South Lake Butler, just north of the wooded area, north of the canal. We had shown it as remaining, but their recommendation or the recommendation from the arborist was to see if we can relocate that connection to avoid root damage. And so we did. We moved it a little farther south. We've got to have a little bit of a pipe underneath it. But yeah, that is one change from the initial alignment where we moved this connection to further avoid the roots of this tree, just to try to get as far away as we can. And so to do that, we will connect right at the edge of that wooded area, where previously we made it past the wooded area and then connected over. So that's just one pretty small change. Already kind of gone over these in some details. The other thing to point out is these trees that have the kind of cross hatching, all right, as shown in the legend. These are different types of trees that are existing, and we have to note that the contractor is liable for damage. So these are trees that are generally not impacted, but we still want to put that fence around them to protect the roots. But we call them out in here and make sure to take care of them separately so that they are preserved. Not too much new going on. Once you get to this portion here, this crosswalk, that's the existing crosswalk at the connection to South Lake Butler, where north or to the right of this point, that's where the existing sidewalk is. And generally the alignment along the sidewalk is, we kept that alignment and then just widened the facility. So to do that, there's still some additional impacts, but we were generally following that existing sidewalk rather than pulling up the sidewalk and starting with a brand new alignment. We just said, hey, this makes a lot of sense. Let's see what we can do to just kind of keep it as much as we can. And then that gets you to the northern end. So that's our tree mitigation plan. That was the last part of this. And as promised, we'll get back, I think it was page 64, to go over the actual landscape plans. Yep, 64. So starting at north, that's north, that's our southern limits. And as you can see in here, everything has a legend in it, but this kind of little dotted area, that's just regular grass. I think we're using Argentine Bahia grass. And then as you go through each area, we do have this kind of transitioning so that there's a different feel as you move through. And we don't have it right now, but a future consideration for the area, if you wanted to, would be to kind of talk about the habitats or the types of landscaping that we have in the different areas and where you can find those in native Florida and whatnot. But again, these ones that with the kind of hatching through them are existing. And then these other ones are new trees. So let's take a look. So we've got this one with the sort of squared but indented portions. So all right, what kind of tree is that? That's this guy, bald cypress. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, that was the southern live oak, this one, right? Southern live oak. That's what we've got here to start with. And then as far as the shrubs that are in right next to the trail, so we've got this little hexagon with a dot, and then the other smaller, more round shrub. Let's get over to that. So that would be your Pringle's dwarf Podocarpus. Probably butchered that one, but I do want to point out that these types of plants were recommendations from the tree board. So we went and asked, okay, what types of shrubs do you want to see? What types of trees do you want to see? And then we built on that to come up with specific recommendations. So the other one that was there was the Kunti palm, so just some smaller shrubs. And that was to start with. And once we get farther up, so again, we're using some of the same types of trees initially. Let's jump up to the next plan sheet. Now we're getting to where this is the northern limits of Old Dirt, Maine. All right, so now this is where the cypress comes in, right? It's a little bit closer to the water, makes sense to have more cypress. And you also look in and you see this kind of like wavy hatch pattern with the little triangles in it. Okay, so that's down here. That's going to get some sand cordgrass included in that area. So again, we're changing a little bit as we get closer to the water. Then once we get north of that area, again, we're replacing some of the trees that we're taking down with ones that are appropriate for the different areas. Since we're near the water, that makes sense to have your cypress trees. And again, the other ground cover is in here as well. continuing on north, and I'm sorry if I'm making anybody's head spin by panning around, but this is still in that kind of heavily wooded area. Now we've got a couple different types of ground covers, where we've got this kind with the X as well as the little this symbol. So we go down, we'll look at it again over here, and that's some lantana. That was the little X or plus symbol next to the sand cordgrass. So we've got a little mix of it in here. And then this is a new type of trees that we haven't called out yet. This one with the little spiky edges. That is going to be your longleaf pine. We did have a comment that longleaf pines make sense in clusters where you can keep them together as opposed to just like one tree here and there. So we've got a cluster of longleaf pines here, as well as another one over here. And so this whole area is kind of pretty heavy with longleaf pines. That's more of a pine habitat with some of that different kind of undergrowth, and then these other shrubs, which were firebush, right? Nope. It's Coontie palm again, right? Let's take a look. And I'm not the landscape architect, but I did talk to him earlier today. So, but yeah, I'm not going to be able to remember every single one. That was the saw palmetto, right? The symbol here. And so you guys can certainly go through these plans on your own if you want to have comments like, oh, I don't think saw palmetto is all too great in this area. I'd rather see something else. Let us know, but we really think that this approach, and our landscape architect did spend a lot of time kind of designing this in a way that could highlight different types of Florida habitats. So then once we get out of this sort of pine area, moving up forward to where we're taking the golf carts off the path, then we switch it up again, and now there's this type of tree, which is again the southern live oak. Lots of oaks. And again, we've got another different habitat area in here, but I think I've given you enough of a picture of what we're trying to do that I'm going to move on and talk about the overall alignment. But there's a few more pages of this as we go on. We just continue to have specific plans of how to landscape this area. And again, we spent a lot of time thinking about, our landscape architect spent a lot of time thinking about how to incorporate these trees in the environment, and while also doing our best to mitigate the existing trees, to keep those existing trees as much as we can. And when we can't, we're certainly replacing them, not in kind, right? We're putting down a lot more trees than we're taking out. So with that, we'll go back towards the beginning of the plan sheet, where we're just looking at roadway plans. Now this has just the way to read these plans. You've got your plan view up at the top. It's just an aerial photo in the background showing where the alignment is compared to Main Street. And then this profile view here shows the elevation. And if you look at, for example, Station 101, it's all lined up. So if you want to figure out, well, how does this compare to the existing ground? You can see here, we're keeping it pretty close to the existing ground when we can. There's a desire to minimize the amount of cut and fill, so that whenever we do have to add some fill, meaning like add some dirt, we're trying to do the smallest amount as possible, because that has an effect as you go farther away. We don't want to add a bunch of dirt in one area that ends up covering up the roots of the adjacent trees that would then impact their health. So again, just we're taking a lot of steps in different ways to protect the trees as much as we can. That hopefully is a theme that kind of comes through with this. But we did modify the alignment to get a little bit closer to Main Street, and the goal there again was based on preserving some of these trees that we initially showed as impacting. Moving along farther north, here's that canal. You can see in the profile view here, this is where it gets pretty deep because that's where the water is. This is where our bridge is located. We had previously discussed what that bridge would look like, and had just moved forward based on those recommendations that we had talked about it probably over a year ago. But this is where it gets a little high. We're only dealing with about a 4% grade, so it's not super steep. And our bottom bridge elevation, right? The amount of clearance is going to match the same clearance that you have at the vehicular bridge that's immediately to the east of this. So if a boat can make it under the bridge that's for cars, it's going to also make it under this bridge. But that was our design criteria, was to match that lower elevation. Continuing north, we're keeping it pretty straight through that heavily wooded area, which you can kind of see in the aerial background here. And again, as I mentioned, we previously were peeling off the golf carts right around almost to station 117, but we moved that back here to avoid some of those tree roots. And as a consequence, we do have to have a small section to pipe to connect that open water with a ditch that we're going to grade in here. Moving along farther north, we do have a little bit of a meander here where we start. You can see the path moves a little bit east and then kicks back a little bit west across the street from where Lake Down Circle would be. And again, this was to maximize or minimize impact to different trees. We certainly have more curves, horizontal and vertical curves in this area, and there will be more cut and fill than in the sort of flatter areas, but we kind of show all this. And then we're also going to include some swales in this area. We're going to construct some swales to help with water quality. That's the primary reason we're putting those swales in. This being 10 feet wide will have some runoff, but with all the space between, there's minimal need for swales just for conveyance. So the primary benefit of those swales is water quality. As we get up towards the connection to Lake Butler Boulevard, we do have some pipes with some mitered end sections that connect the swales on each side of this path. So again, we're just really trying to make this have as much synergy as we can by providing some of these drainage and water quality improvements while we're building this path. But that's what these items are here, with a pipe underneath that connects them. This area here where the path kind of dips down, again, the idea there was to avoid impacting some of the trees, to minimize impacts to roots. But we've got a proposed shared concrete path, 10 feet wide, and north of Lake Butler Boulevard, we're generally following the alignment of the existing sidewalk, except where it jogs right now. Like it jogs and there's a little bit of a pipe and a ditch, if you're familiar with this area. We're trying to straighten that out to make that a lot smoother and also have fewer impacts. So that's one area where we do deviate from the existing sidewalk. The existing sidewalk is here in these dashed lines, which does, again, we kind of curve over a little bit earlier and then straighten out. In the north of that little connection, we are kind of right back on top of where the existing sidewalk is again. Something else that I wanted to show you, I don't want to guess what page it is. I think I wrote it down. It's 54. There we go. 54 gets you a little bit of details about the bridge itself. So this is generally what the bridge would look like. This is not to scale. It's just sort of it does have some information on it, but like the picture itself is not to scale. The dimensions are correct. So 63 feet is the distance that we needed. And we did that by having some walls that go up to the bridge. And that was a cost measure, right? Or a cost. We were trying to keep the cost low by reducing the length of the bridge. So there will be some walls a little bit in advance of the water line. Like you can see here, this line is the 100-year flood. Whereas this second line is just more of a normal high water area. So if you're probably accustomed to seeing the water about right here, the bridge will continue beyond that point, right? We've got the bridge a little bit longer, and the cost really goes up around 75 feet. And certainly at 100 feet, it goes up almost exponentially. But to keep some value here, we wanted to have a combination of this wall with a pedestrian railing above it that would then match the height of the railing that goes across the bridge. Now, again, I said this is not to scale, and the main difference is the actual span going across the bridge, this arched or bowed portion, that's a little bit higher than the pedestrian railing. The pedestrian railing is only 30 inches high, whereas the height of the bow was higher than that, and that had been previously determined in coordination with the town council. So this is where our bridge details are. After sort of the middle of the plan sheets, we've got a lot more details on the bridge typical section, but it's generally 14 feet within the rails. And we do include these rails here that just provide a vertical picket to prevent anybody from on the golf cart primarily from just sort of bumping into the actual bridge vertical portions of the bridge. But we're proposing a concrete deck. It's got to be at 2% max slope, but we're proposing 1.5%. That's just so that water drains off of the bridge portion. And we've got all kinds of other information about the bridge in this section of the plan sheets. Some details about the walls here, where they're located, where they start, where they stop. That's the retaining walls that are on either side leading up to the bridge. And plenty of other design stuff that I'll skip over and just kind of end here and turn it over for questions. But that's it's basically where we are. And to reiterate a point that Robert made early on, we have gone through several alignments here. I mean, we started the project by walking through to try to set the initial alignment. Then we drew it up. We met with the arborist. Well, town staff met and walked with the arborist. We took it back and accommodated some of as many of those recommendations as we could, and then even took it another step to provide additional root protection or separation from some of those trees, and submitted 60% plans. We had a workshop at 60%. We took some of the comments from the public. We took comments from the tree board about what types of trees, what types of shrubs, what type of ground cover, and we've really tried to incorporate as much of that as we could in these plans. And so what you're seeing now at 90% is sort of the culmination of all that work that has occurred. And that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to walk through. But again, if there's other specific questions, we can go into details on these plan sheets.
Thanks, Mike. I know we had some people that joined that are south of north that had some questions, but they had to leave the meeting. But that's going to be phase 2. Again, this is going from north to Park Avenue, and this is partially funded by the town and also funded by a federal earmark, which is in next fiscal year's budget. Yeah, we're open to any questions. I see we have several members from the tree board on. So if you want to raise your hand, ask a question, now's the time. Bill.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Mike, for all your efforts to preserve as many trees as possible. I know that's it's a challenge to work around all that, but the plan looks great. So thank you very much. Is the bridge shown on the landscape plan or the approximate location of the bridge? And if not, can you put in a dotted line that shows sort of the ballpark?
So yeah, so are you so here you can see the end of the retaining wall.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I'll zoom in a little bit more. So here's the wall. So the bridge pretty much picks up right at the end of the retaining wall.
Okay.
And then the canal's pretty clearly marked just because there's sod. Same thing on the other side. Here's the wall that's a little bit longer on the north end. But those retaining walls allow you to gain some elevation along the alignment of the path.
So so the existing pedestrian bridge is coming out, correct?
That's correct. You can see that here. As part of this plan set, we would include demolition of that existing pedestrian bridge.
Okay, good. And then the existing sidewalk is going to go away also wherever that meanders, like north of Lake Butler Boulevard. All that's coming out as well, correct?
Correct. And largely this will be, well,
replaced.
Aside from the areas where I was pointing out where I deviated, this will be replaced in the same area. But no, the sidewalk will be replaced. It's not like we're going to just try to build something adjacent to it, right? We're not going to take the old sidewalk and then just put another 5 feet next to it. We'll rip up the old concrete, flatten everything out, and then put the new path down.
Okay, so wherever there's sidewalk that's not within this linear path, that will be taken out and landscaped probably.
Correct.
I'm assuming. Okay. All right, good. Yeah, it looks good. Nice job.
Thank you. Credit goes to my team.
Good job, team.
Yeah, that's for you, Chris.
Yeah, I see a comment from Susan Carter and the Massey family. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Vicky?
I think I'm unmuted.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate they went back and addressed the landscape plan with more native plants and things like that. I'm happy to see those changes or those thoughts were taken into consideration. One of my concerns has been the linear feet that the golf carts share with the pedestrians or the bicyclists.
Mhm.
And I know that part of the problem has been that water on the north side. So I suspect that's going to probably just remain. That's not changed, because it looks to me like there's at least 450 or more linear feet that's shared by the golf carts and the pedestrians. So my question or thought is, after these plans are approved, is the town or town council going to consider putting in ordinances for golf carts, such as like Winter Garden has, where you can't drive a golf cart unless you're over 18 years of age? So what's going to prevent the teenage golf cart drivers from running me over as I walk across the bridge? That's my question of the day.
Yeah, we currently have an ordinance in place, and we would look to make any adjustments as we move further along. But yes, we can address that. I'd have to relook at our golf cart ordinance that we currently have, but I know that we did mirror it after Winter Garden.
Okay, because Winter Gardens is 18.
Yeah, it's about enforcement too. So
Yeah, of course. All right, thank you.
Is that portion of the pathway wider? Is it 14 feet wide on the golf cart portion?
It's 14 feet on the bridge itself, and then once you get off the bridge, it's 12 feet. We wanted to have the extra width on the bridge because there's really no change in the bridge.
Yeah.
And then it's 12 feet, and we thought that was plenty until the golf carts are off the system, and then it narrows down to 10. So it sort of steps down. And the width of a golf cart, like 14 feet is overkill. In case you have like two of them, I mean, they'd have to have some like a huge lift kit with some tires pushed out way to the side. Like you're not a golf cart at that point for it to be even close. So yeah, I think the 14 feet is plenty wide, and 12 feet is wide enough for them to pass each other if there is a golf cart going in each direction. Yeah, I mean, I'd really hope that teenagers are behaving responsibly if they're driving golf carts in this area. But in general, with situations like that, until I think it's something that you could address after we know that it's a problem.
Well, it's like anything else. It's one or two individuals that that I have to have a chat with their dad about, and it's been like that ever since my kids were little, trying to drive a golf cart. I've had people chat with me about my kids in their golf carts. So yeah, it's a great way for kids to learn how to drive, but they do have to be responsible because they are can be dangerous vehicles. So we do have to look at that as well.
yeah, this will hopefully eliminate the people that are crossing over on the actual road bridge too.
Right.
So that's a real danger right now.
That is
Especially
true.
with their kids.
That's a great point. I see that all the time. It's terrifying.
And more on the last Friday of the month.
Really?
Yeah, for some reason.
Oh.
No.
Well, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Is there any other comments, questions, concerns? And if not, we'll take this to Town Council in August.
I'd just like to say thank you to Mike and his team. I really appreciate the efforts that you went to. I worked hand in hand with you on making sure that the landscaping plan and the trees were all working together. And I do appreciate that you took that extra effort. Thank you. I'm
glad you were happy to walk the site with us, Tanya.
I was going to mention that in my first month, you did try to kill me.
Maybe you should rewalk it again, it's July, so.
It is July.
All right, seeing no additional questions or concerns, thank you all for participating tonight. If anybody that was not able to attend tonight, we're again going to put this on the, sorry, I'm reading. I do want to thank Bike Walk Central Florida for joining this meeting as well. And we will post this on our YouTube channel, so please feel free to share it. And again, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.